We are dancing in the discomfort zone today with Scott Tillema, global keynote speaker and number one authority on leading with influence and conquering challenging conversations. And he comes up at it from a really interesting angle, that of SWAT, a hostage negotiator. Scott, how are you today?
Hey Ann, how's it going? I'm doing well.
Good. I'm excited to have this conversations. When I saw connected with you on LinkedIn, I'm like, oh, I want this because this is cool. Because not only do you have that experience, but you also have the experience of bringing that to a little bit more of an everyday level. So tell me about your background and sort of how you got into SWAT hostage negotiation.
Yeah, I figured Dancing with Discomfort, this is probably a pretty good fit for us. So
Yes.
in school, I studied behavioral science with a master's in psychology. I'm very interested in why we think the way we do, why we do the things we do, why other people do the things they do, and how we can maybe influence them to move them in a certain direction. And in 2002, I was hired as a police officer in the suburbs of Chicago. And by 2007, I was selected to be a hostage negotiator on a regional SWAT team serving 70 different cities around Chicago, 1.8 million people. And that was a pretty cool phone call to get because you realize that all of a sudden we are taking our conversations to the next level because every time they call for the SWAT team, somebody's having a bad day and there are lives on the line and we need to be exceptionally good at what we do to make sure that we get good, peaceful, safe outcomes, even with emotional people, even in challenging situations. And as it turns out, that same skill set is really useful to people in all kinds of professional fields because in so many areas we're all dealing with emotional people and challenging situations. So as a professional speaker today, I love to share this from the stage to inspire audiences to be powerful negotiators.
Yeah. Well, and that's something that I learned early on. I started my career as a special needs teacher. I taught K through 4 kids with emotional disabilities and behavioral disorders. And you've got parents who are incredibly emotionally charged because this is their kid. And we want to make sure we get it right. So not even a close parallel, but a distant and foggy parallel to that, and dealing with people in emotional situations.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
My kids are the best trainers I have on how to be more patient and how to be more emotionally intelligent. So they give me my practice every day. I think you're spot on with that one.
Yeah. So take me through the key skills that you needed as you're standing outside the bank and some guys in the bank with some hostages, and demanding a helicopter and, unmarked bills or whatever. What are the key skills you needed in that moment?
It sounds so Hollywood, doesn't it?
It
I,
does. That's
I think that most of the work we've done are actually with a single individual who's in crisis. Thankfully, hostage taking isn't such a big thing in the United States, but we deal with people who are armed and barricaded. They're trying to avoid arrest. Maybe they're suicidal. Maybe they're just struggling, a domestic at home, whatever it could be. And sometimes there are other people involved. Sometimes there are hostages involved, and in any case, we know that the consequences are going to be significant, and that even though this person might be having a bad day, we still know that somebody loves this person, somebody cares about them, and somebody might be relying on them, and we want to get them out of there safely. But it's more than just asking nicely, yes, please, no, thank you, because what happens when that doesn't work? We have to understand what's motivating people to do the things they do and how we can move them in the direction we want them to go. So when I put together an outline of how we bring influence to a situation with an emotional person in a dangerous situation, I have four big principles, and it goes around understanding, timing, delivery, and respect. And I try to keep it as simple as basic four words. So when you are the person who is leading this tough conversation, you don't have to go to a spreadsheet, a flow chart, and think of big, long concepts. It's four words: understanding, timing, delivery, respect. And we can get into those and break those down. But at its core, you have to work to understand. figure out what, am I being a good listener? What's the issue here? We can't solve the problem if we don't know what it is. Timing is the strategy piece. Are they in a position to actually hear you and process what's being said? Are you in a position to best deliver your message? The delivery is not what you say, how you say it, and under stress and under pressure, that will be the first thing that is gone from people when they are working with somebody in a tense situation. And then finally, respect, which sometimes I lead the conversation with. I think that it's more than just being respectful. It's understanding the drivers of human behavior. People need to feel like they're being treated fairly. They need empathy. We want people to understand our pain and our perspective. We want autonomy, the freedom to make our own decisions, and a little bit of appreciation for the things that we're doing right. And I found that if we work on these 4 principles, and I see them in a circle, that we continue to work around that circle, highlighting these 4 big areas, that what we're doing is we're creating a bond with that person who's in crisis. And through that bond allows us to have influence, because we can't have influence without connection. And in very, very short, that's how we do it. And we can get deeper into each one of those. But for anybody looking to go out and be a powerful crisis negotiator, you've just found my framework, and that's how we do it.
I love it. I love it. This brings up so many questions for me that people ask in a normal day-to-day business setting. But the first one is on the emotional intelligence side, on the understanding and respect aspects of this. I imagine you had to kind of separate the crime from the human. Right? Talk to me a little bit about that, because I think that's a big piece that people struggle with when someone in the workplace is doing something that they would never do, or, taking it to an extreme level of the hostage situation. How do you do that?
For sure. And we get that a lot, because I do a lot of leadership training with companies, and sometimes they'll tell me, listen, you don't understand. This is a really difficult person. They're really emotional, and they get into it. And when we're talking about respect, I get that it's hard to extend respect if maybe you don't agree with what they're doing, or they're behaving badly, they're not meeting standards, whatever it might be. But my question is this about you? Is this about your ego? Is this about you being right? Or is this about you trying to achieve an outcome on the other side of this conversation? 100% of the time, it has to be about trying to get to the outcome. That's what negotiation is. We're trying to get to an outcome that's acceptable for both parties. And as soon as it becomes about me and my ego gets in the way, and you can't say this to me and you have to treat me a certain way, we're in big, big trouble, because now we're going down the wrong tangent. But if we stay focused on our goal, and I challenge people to write on the top of their paper, on the top of the whiteboard, whatever they got, to say, what is my goal here? And if we can get very focused on this is why we're having the conversation, this is where we need to go, it becomes very easy to say, I need a strategy to get there. And it begins with extending respect and have this person feel respected. Because I don't think that we're going to get influence just with respect, but this is such a foundational piece that if we're missing respect, the rest of it isn't going to matter, because they're not going to buy into this connection that we may or may not have.
Yeah. Oh, such an important piece. And how do you keep it authentic? It's another question people ask a lot is, oh, they just think it's a strategy. They'll just think, oh, you're just pandering to me to get you what you want. And in the business setting, oftentimes we have some time with people before we have to deal with a tough conversation. You're walking into it cold, like, all right, we're already in a crisis. How do you keep that respect feeling authentic to the other person?
Yeah, and I think that it's always true when I tell them, I want you to be able to walk away from this situation and be all in one piece. And I can guarantee your safety if you work with me and do the things we need to do together. So I'm highlighting that they may have a fear that they've seen the TV shows, they've seen the movies, they're afraid police might kill them, hurt them, whatever it might be, the dog, the tear gas, all these things. And I let them know, I can assure your safety, but you need to do the things that I'm asking you to do, and you need to work with me. And if you need a little bit of time, I'm okay with that. We've got some time. In a lot of these situations, we have time. And I think that that's a piece that I love to really highlight with your audience. We feel uncomfortable in these conversations. And we know that there's anxiety, there's fear, there's all these yucky emotions when you know you got to have a conversation with somebody. So, what happens because of that? Two things. Number one, we just avoid it and we don't do it. But if we have to have that conversation, we are going to rush as fast as we can through it because we don't like that yucky feeling. We're trying to
Get it
get
over
out of there.
with.
And that's so counterproductive because if people are going to change their behavior, they have to make that decision. That
Mhm.
doesn't come from me. I can encourage them, I can coach them, I can give them options, but ultimately, I'm going to give them the autonomy, the freedom to make that decision themselves. Because once they choose what path they're going down, they will then take the action to follow it. Because the decision without action doesn't mean a whole lot. We need them to act. And that could be I agree to show up for work on time. I agree to dress like a professional. I agree not to use profanity in the workplace. I agree to try to sell more stuff, give a better product, whatever it is. But once they choose it and they put it into action, then we're in the right place. Now we're moving in the right direction, but that takes time. So
Mm.
don't rush these conversations. Be willing to sit with them and explore what is the pain. What is your perspective? Help me see it the way you see it. And the best negotiators believe in what is possible. And the problem is, we know where we are, we know where we want to go. And just because we can't see that path, so many people choose not to engage because I don't know the way to get there. I can't see the path. But I believe we can get to wherever we're going, and we're going to do that together. And it's going to be you and I working through this together. So it becomes very authentic because we have a shared goal here. And that's the definition of negotiation. We have a shared goal.
I love that. I love that. And I think that's important for people, again, in the workplace where you're having performance conversations or at home, when you're having them with your spouse or your kids, is that shared goal. Like we both want to get along. We both want this. How do we get there? And it's so interesting. I speak primarily on change when I'm on stage, and that's exactly what we talk about: is that unknown. I know where I'm trying to get to. I don't know what the path looks like to get there, but if I just start walking down, and when you're taking somebody with you, you walk it down together. I love that. Wow. And I think what you just said also was so this is the timing aspect of it, right? Slowing down to be able to say, hey, we're not in a rush here, because the inclination is to rush. Is there a tactic that you help people to just calm down and slow the roll? Because I know I'll rush through it. I want to get it over with and let's go have snacks.
Of course, and I'm the same way. Hey, let's get this done and go. But you learn when you're having these high intensity conversations that initially this person is not even in a position where they can process what you're saying. So you can say the correct thing, you can say it in the correct delivery, but if you say it at the wrong time, you know they don't even hear you. They just can't process this because it's all emotion. And this is how we're making decisions based on emotion. So you learn that until we bring that emotion down a little bit. And time is what it takes to bring that emotion down. Time and a little bit of comfort and some trust that we're building. Because it works to my advantage that in the movies, it's always me against you and it's negotiation is this fight. But when you come into it and you're a little bit more collaborative, they see I'm not fighting against you. I'm working with you to highlight we do have some shared goals here. But when you tell them certain things and you see that it's not connecting, it's not making sense, you realize I have to slow down. I can't rush this because they're not in a place that they can even really synthesize what's being said. And I mean, it's been on a grand scale. We had a guy holding a woman hostage, and during the initial negotiation, he was vomiting in the background. And nobody in the room thought, well, maybe he was suffering from an early strain of COVID. We knew what was going on with this guy. He was so psychologically up here,
Yep.
so stressed out that he couldn't even control his own body. So it really validates what we know with this timing piece on negotiation. So we have to slow down because if you don't want to, you're going to realize you're not going to be effective one.
hmm Well, and it's so important to think about that and be able to do that and be able to be patient in the process. And I imagine, and people's expectations, like the guy that was vomiting or somebody in your office, come talk to me in my office, the expectations and that anticipatory stress create so much more of again that heightened arousal that you talked about. Is there a way to kind of bring that down? I mean, how do you know when you're at the point where they're receptive to an actual conversation?
I think in the workplace, one of the best things you can do if you're inviting someone to a meeting, let them know what this is. This isn't Christmas morning where we're going to surprise you with this thing. It's stressful for people to say, "Hey, I'm calling you in for a meeting," particularly if there's a power imbalance there. Let them know this is what we're going to talk about. And if there's any questions you have in advance, let's kind of put them on the table so we can come prepared. So I think number one, it's going to lower that anxiety of the unknown. We fear the unknown, and that's instinctive behavior that the brain is designed to keep us alive. So if we don't know what this is, we're naturally going to be a little bit afraid. So we're going to make it a little bit more known, and maybe ask them, what questions do you have about this process, about what's about to happen, about this conversation? And people say, I've never really had this opportunity. And leaders fail because they don't call people in and have real conversations with them on the good days. They don't sit down and build this relationship when things are going well. So it's almost believed that anytime I'm being called, it's because something bad has happened. So let's do a little bit better from a leadership standpoint of building the relationship when things are good, so that anxiety isn't up at a 10 when I'm walking to the office. "Hey, boss, what's going on?" And it's coming. It's coming. So that small talk of, "Hey, we're going to try and relax them," and then make that little sandwich and then we tell them the bad stuff, then tell them the good stuff. I'm still not ready because I'm still waiting at the edge of my chair for, "What do you have for me?" Yep.
Right.
And it's coming, and it's coming.
And some would say that telling them, "Hey, I want to, have a conversation with you about your performance. Be ready with questions. Come on in," would raise the anxiety a little bit. So talk to me about. I mean, you said that it lowers it, but that feels counterintuitive to me.
I think so. And one of the things that I would add, how, if in that particular situation is, how have you prepared for this, knowing that this is about this? Since this is going to be about your performance, I want to hear from you. How is your performance? And really give them the stage, because I think that we come in on the defensive waiting for someone to unload on us, and we give them the stage. How have things been going this last year, this last quarter, this last week? I'd like to hear from you. What challenges have you faced? Where do we need to do better to support you? And you hear these different things, and maybe they'll share some things that you don't know. Maybe they'll share some things that you know, but we're allowing them to get a little bit more comfortable. We're allowing them to have maybe a perceived sense of power here, that they're leading the conversation.
At least
And
they
I'll
have a
use this,
voice, right?
of course, and that's what
Yeah.
we want. We just want to be heard. We just want to be heard. And I'll give that to people to say, I want to know what's going on. I've got all the time in the world. I can see you're having a bad day. How did we get here? How do we get here? And we do it in a tone and a cadence that's a little bit slower, a little bit quieter, to have them feel, hey, maybe this person cares about me.
Hmm.
Right. And it's going to bring that down and allow them to get some of that energy out, because they're sharing and they're physically allowed to get this out. But then all of a sudden we can get to a place they're getting a little bit more comfortable, and we can ask them, would it be okay if I share with you some observations about what I've seen and how things are going in your work? And with their permission, I want to share with them what I see, but also I'm going to let them know I am here because I want you to succeed. As your boss, as your peer, as whatever, I want you to succeed. And it's my responsibility to make sure the business succeeds and our organization does well. And to that extent, I want to help you however I can. And I think it's important that you're aware of this. And maybe even ask them, are you aware that this, and this? And a lot of times people will say, no one has ever told me this. And we're stunned. We're like, how can that be? But we see how many people avoid conversations. We give them this feedback. And sometimes feedback is a tough word. So I'll like observation. Can I share an observation? Because I want you to do well. And we just frame it that I'm on your side here. I'm not coming down on you. And of course, at some point, we're going to have to put some boundaries and limitations on behavior. But I think that if we start from a collaborative point of view and then try to get them to choose their outcome, and we can allow them choice. I think in negotiation, if we allow them a choice, that's so powerful rather than saying you have to do this. Now that's an autonomy trigger, an autonomy violation. You can't tell me what to do. Say, well, if we continue to do this, here's what the outcome is going to be. However, if we're able to change this a little bit and get over here, here's what's going to happen next. And allow them to make that choice of, okay, well, I don't have to do this, but I also might not have a job. And sometimes it becomes a little bit more tolerable when they are a partner with me in this process to move to where we want to go.
I think clarity is key in that case, because what you're saying is, okay, here are our choices. Here's what you can do. You've got control here. Here's what you can do. And here's what's going to happen if you choose to do those things. So they've got, and this is what I say in my workshops. And it's funny, as I was getting on here, I was like, dude used to be a hostage negotiator. My little tough conversations class is probably not quite as good as his. But one of the things that I say is give them all the information they need to make the best possible choice for themselves, because that's giving them control.
I like it. I like that. And people want to feel like they're in control. They want to feel like they have some say in what's about to happen to them. And that's why I think one of the 4 big drivers of behavior is this autonomy piece, that I need to have a choice and a say in what's about to happen. And it can be little. I mean, I've arrested hundreds of people, and we get into lockup, and you get through one big security door, the next big security door, the next big security door, and they're handcuffed behind their back. And I tell them, all right, I'm going to take those handcuffs off. I know it's a little bit uncomfortable, but policy says I got to handcuff you to this bench here. Would you prefer it if it's on your right hand or your left hand? What's more comfortable for you? I don't really care, because they're not getting out of here. They're not going anywhere. And short of an ultra violent person who I really need to be concerned about, I'm going to ask them, okay, well, maybe my left hand, because if I need to sign some stuff, I can have, okay, great. It doesn't matter to me, but we give them that little bit of choice. That's the autonomy piece. And we come to a negotiation and we offer, would you prefer this or would you prefer this? We're going to get to such better outcomes, because maybe they don't really prefer either, but they'll say, there's something about this I like. And now we're getting beyond positions to the interest. Well, what about this package? What about this agreement is a little bit more attractive than that one? And if we're able to build up those pieces that you identified, would this be an acceptable arrangement for you? And a lot of times this is what allows us to get past the finish line, because it's not just the position, it's the interest behind it.
Well, and this goes back to building that foundation of trust. Even though you're now locking this person up, they still are going to have to deal with you and whoever's next. And so keeping that respect going is huge.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
And we always kind of joke about that there's going to be a next time. And why not set the table for success for the person down the road, rather than being the jerk who's lying, who's untruthful, who's manipulative? Nobody wants to deal with that.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's such an important piece to remember, to treat people like the adult, mature professionals that they are. So what about, before we get to delivery, what about the person who walks into your office, closes their arms, and sits there like, I'm not gonna say anything? How do you deal with that?
That's cool. I'll call out what I see. I say, it sounds like, or it looks like you're closed off. It sounds like you don't want to have this conversation. And I'll make some observations, because we're taught in the skills of active listening, and in the understanding piece, we could go into these 8 skills of active listening. And I think the most important is open-ended questions. But the challenge of this is people don't like to be interrogated. I was a detective for 5.5 years doing interviews and interrogations all the time. People don't like to be asked questions. People don't like to, here comes a question, instead of creating connection, actually creates disconnection, because the walls then go up. But we can make some observations. Hey, it looks like you don't want to be here. So I get the impression you're frustrated with me. And sometimes if we're not quite right, almost intentionally not quite right, they're going to come back and correct the record for us. Well, that's not the case. And it's going to start the conversation, because there's 3 steps here. If we want influence, influence begins with connection. And if we want connection, connection begins with a dialogue. And having that dialogue with somebody is critical, and taking the time. And it's a tactic for them. They come and they do this. It's like, okay, you don't want to talk. Well, here's what it is. Bang, bang, bang. And let them know, We have to get to an agreement here today, and that's going to require you to be part of this. So I want to invite you into conversation. And if you're frustrated about something, I'd love to hear it. If you've had bad experiences in the past, I'd love to know about that as well so I don't make those mistakes. I am here in service to make sure we get good outcomes, and that's going to include you. And if we continue this behavior for a certain period of time where I'm really just going to defy the boss, we're going to let them know there's standards here. That when you choose to work here, you agree to a certain level of behavior. And I'm sure that's the case at nearly every employer in the world to say, you've agreed to do this. And if you don't want to do that anymore, I don't want to hold you back. You don't have to be here. You can make that choice. But if you're just having a bad day, let me work with you a little bit because I would hate for you to lose your job because you're struggling right now. And one of the things that I've learned in my work as a negotiator is that everybody's in crisis. Everybody's wearing this t-shirt that nobody else can see. It's under this shirt, it's under my jacket. And some of those t-shirts are, I'm fighting with my spouse. We're struggling financially. My kids are sick. I'm caring for an elderly parent. Help me. I'm struggling with alcohol abuse, substance abuse, mental health. I just need to get through the day. And if we can really kind of be curious, I wonder what his t-shirt says today. It's going to put me in a place where I'm going to slow down and not be in such a rush to get out of here or not try to bully him and use my position of power to tell him, hey, well, if you're going to be a jerk, I'm going to tell you this. I wonder what his t-shirt says today because I bet he's wearing it and I bet it's something that's pretty challenging. And if we can help somebody when they're in these crisis states, they're coming in, I don't want to talk to you, they're really having a tough go of it, they're going to remember you forever. And rarely is someone going to turn around and be like, you know what, that was really great, you're an amazing person. They'll walk out of there and they'll remember, no one ever treated me like that. And you might not ever hear any feedback on it, or it might come 5, 10, 20 years later, but they're going to remember how they felt when they sat with you in those moments of crisis.
I love it. And one of the things I say a lot is if we can have these tough conversations well, it makes everything else after that easier. And especially in the workplace when we're having these tough conversations, it's a vital piece because it's not a transaction. We are hopefully going to be working with them for a while.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yep. So the last piece that you talked about was delivery, and this whole episode I've been listening to the calm, soothing tone of your voice, and I'm like, oh, we're good. I'll just do whatever you need. I'll leave mama behind and I'll come out. Talk to me about delivery. A lot of us, are combating. I have a loud, commanding voice, and so sometimes it can come off as aggressive and unfriendly. How do we fine tune our delivery to make sure our delivery isn't betraying what we're trying to achieve?
For sure. And this is a great skill to have if you are a professional speaker or if you're in communications or if you are a leader, because under stress and pressure, delivery is the first thing that goes. And I've done work with IMD Business School over in Switzerland, advanced high performance leadership, some of the top CEOs and government leaders from around the world. And we do scenario training where they're having tough conversations. And we've taught them all these things and they know all these things. These are really effective people. And we'll call a time out a few minutes in and I'll ask them, how are things going? And they're like, well, not good because, you're crying, yelling as the role player and they're trying to work through it. And I'll ask them, how was your delivery? And the answer is always the same. It's, I have no idea because I'm trying to remember the listening skills, watching the nonverbals, getting all these things right. I don't know how my delivery was. So this is a piece that we have to be very deliberate about and really have to practice. And I think there's 5 good elements in a delivery. It's the rate, the rhythm, the pressure, the volume, and the tone of how we say. And each one of these things can be changed just a little bit to create an entirely different feeling with the person that we're working with. And I'll let you see behind the curtain here a little bit. In the movies, you've got a really good looking hostage negotiator, Denzel Washington or somebody out there on the phone strutting up and down Fifth Avenue, like good looking people, like he's the superhero, amazing, cool stuff. In the real world, it doesn't work like that. If I'm the primary negotiator, somebody who's on the phone, sitting right across from me is a secondary negotiator or a coach, and they're listening into this conversation in real time with me. And right across the table, no one in the world gets to talk to me if I'm the primary except for my coach. And as we're going, the coach can deliver notes to me. We dedicate an entire negotiator. We got 8 or 10 negotiators working a scene, and one of them is dedicated entirely to coach me in real time. And sometimes it's, hey, let's slow down here a little bit. Let's turn down that volume a little bit quieter, a little bit slower. But if we stay focused on these 5 elements, the rate, not too fast, not too slow. If we're too fast, people can't process it. They might think that we're lying to them because it's really, really too fast. But if we go too slow, we've lost their attention. Our attention span is now like 4 seconds. So we got to get the rate right. The rhythm, we get into a cadence. We want to be very predictable, very familiar, because every time I get on the phone, every time I say something, I want it to be comfortable for them. And that anticipatory anxiety that we talked about earlier isn't going to be there because this guy is always right here in the zone. So the rate, the rhythm, the pressure, we don't realize we put pressure behind our words when we get excited or anxious. So we take that pressure off. There's no pressure. And we do this both ways. We do it both offensively, how I use it, but I'm also studying it defensively to say all of a sudden there is some pressure there in what they're saying. I want to go back and understand what was done or said or thought that might have increased their anxiety a little bit. So the rate, rhythm, pressure, volume, sometimes we get louder when we want to be heard. I think if we take it down a bit, that can be just as effective. And tone, we know when someone's giving us attitude in the tone, and we just have to be so disciplined and our awareness of this. So I would challenge your listeners. If you're listening right now, I want you to find someone you know and trust and ask them this question. Under stress, under pressure, how is my delivery? How is my communication? And for sure, this person has been waiting years to tell you what they are about to tell you. And when they give you that feedback, I want you to just say, thank you. You don't have to be defensive. You don't have to explain it because this is about you getting better. This is why you're tuned in. It's why you're listening. It's why you're watching. You want to be better at being a person, at being a professional, and get that feedback. Here's your delivery under stress and pressure, and it's not good. Thank you for that. I want to work on being better at that. And I'd love for you to call me out when I'm not. Now we got some tangible pieces we can work. I wonder how my rate, my rhythm, pressure, volume, tone, let me work on these things. And people say, how can I practice this? Easy. I know you're going to get a spam call today. You're probably going to get 10 of them. Your iPhone can block these spam calls, unblock them for an entire day, and you are not allowed to miss a phone call. And you're going to get a call from somebody to let you know your license is suspended, you didn't pay the tolls, your grandchild is in jail somewhere, whatever it is. Don't ever pay them any money. But you're not allowed to hang up until you get through 8 skills of active listening and you're mindful of your delivery and you practice. I need to slow down. Let me try slowing down here a little bit. This person will not hang up on you. They are going to stay with you because they think you got a sucker. And just check it off. All right, I've worked on each of the 5 elements of delivery. I got through 8 of the active listening. All right, have a nice day. Thanks for calling. Boop. And wait 5 more minutes and you got another one to give you even more practice. Nonstop practice.
That's insidious and delightful.
It'll keep you busy.
That's spectacular. So you talked about, and I know people can probably Google these, but just go through real quick the 8 skills of listening in case I have a spam call right after this interview.
Right. And you can look this up. There are books written on this. Anybody who studies hostage or crisis negotiation knows these things. The acronym to remember this is MORE PIES. It starts with minimal encouragers, just the yeah, okay. I just want to keep you talking. And now that we're doing more communication virtually, we can do like nonverbal encouragers, open-ended questions. These are questions that are going to create dialogue. It's not a knock against closed-ended questions. Sometimes we need that. I need the yes or no. I need the piece of information. So we can ask that. But under stress, you're not going to be creative to come up with these questions. The third one is reflecting or mirroring. This is just repeating back the words that they're saying. The last 2 or 3 words that they say, we're just going to repeat that back, and it almost hands the conversation back to them where they keep going. So we have minimal encouragers, open-ended questions, reflecting or mirroring. Next is emotion labeling. And I think with open-ended questions, emotion labeling is probably the second most powerful one because everybody in crisis, people are responding to what they're saying. And an emotion label is you sound frustrated. You seem upset. I sense you are disappointed. and we're going to get to the emotion behind the words they're saying. And this, if we get this right, it's a moment where you just see the stress melt away because they're thinking, finally, somebody gets it. Finally, somebody cares enough about me to listen and understand how I feel. So that is a big one. Next is paraphrasing, particularly in a cross-cultural situation. This is an important one. I've done some work in Canada and Australia, and they all speak English, but they'll use words that we might not use in America or even across the US. Different parts of the country use different words. So instead of guessing what that means, we'll paraphrase that and say, so it sounds like da 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 da, and we're saying it the same way with different words. And iMessage, this is really the most technical of the 8 skills of active listening. I feel blank when you blank because blank. This is addressing bad behavior. I feel worried when you keep shooting the gun because it's dangerous. Or in the professional world, I feel frustrated when you don't respond to these emails because we have a deadline. And the iMessage is calling out this bad behavior without pointing the finger and say, hey, you're being a jerk or don't do this anymore. And iMessages are super powerful. Anytime I hear it, I know this is a trained negotiator, somebody who is really, really good at what they're doing, but you only get to use it once. If we continue to use it, it's going to come out as a technique and inauthentic. And I love what you said earlier about authenticity. That is so powerful. We have to be authentic when we do this, which is why you have to be just so good at this. So we're having a conversation. I'm looking at my notebook going, all right, it's time for the emotion label. Yeah. So we got iMessages. Next is effective pauses or silence, where are you comfortable in silence? And this is a real question. Anybody listening, are you comfortable in silence? And most people aren't. And when we go quiet for a minute, what's someone going to do? They're going to fill that space. And what I'm doing is, again, handing the conversation back to you. And finally, the 8th skill is summaries, which is putting together all the content I heard with all the emotion I heard behind it and say, so what I'm hearing you say is this, and you feel like this, this, and this. And where people get this wrong is they think this is at the end of the conversation. And I would challenge, if we're not doing this every, maybe not few minutes, but every 10 minutes along the way, we're missing an opportunity to demonstrate that we're understanding. And the 8 skills of active listening are great. It's going to help you listen a little bit, but more importantly, it's demonstrating to your partner that I'm paying attention. We can say, I get it, I understand. Don't ever use that because we don't really get it. We don't really understand, but we demonstrate that by using these skills of active listening. But the cherry on top of all of this is please care about what this person's saying. I don't need you to learn the 8 skills of active listening. I need you to care. And if you don't care, that's a conversation we need to have. Why not? Mm-hmm. And maybe it's you're burned out. Maybe it's this isn't the role for you. Maybe it's you haven't gotten the training. Maybe we just need to change of pace. But there's a reason that you don't care, but I just need you to care. None of it matters if I don't care.
I love it. I love it. Such important things. And I mean, I'm so glad that leadership and influence is being led by this empathetic, we're all adults. We've got stuff. We got stuff on our shirt. My mom calls it a sandwich board, but still whatever. We've got all this stuff and we're all trying to just bumble through this together. And so I think that caring piece and separating the crime, whether it's literally a crime or a work crime, from the human is such an important piece of effective leadership these days. That must be when somebody finally comes out and they're like, I'm good here, take me away. And it worked. Must be an incredibly satisfying experience.
Oh, it's awesome. I remember my first negotiation. One of the big commanders of the team, he was the police chief at a neighboring suburb from where I worked. And I remember I was the lead negotiator. This guy came out and this commander, the chief of police, stuck his head in the negotiations room and he just said aces. And I was like, whew. Hey, we nailed it, letting me know he came out. The SWAT team has him. It's all good. But these are the moments that we realize we all have the incredible ability to use verbal influence to get good outcomes. Even with emotional people, even in challenging situations, we all have it because I wasn't born with this. This was trained into me. These are learnable skills. They're perishable skills, but all of us, if we're listening right now, we can commit to saying, let me grab a book. Hostage at the Table by George Kohlreiser. Great. Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Great. You're going to learn some of these negotiation skills right now. Watch a video, listen to a podcast. There's so many resources, but you can level up. And maybe you don't see this invisible progress that you're making, but keep chipping away and people are going to notice there's something different about you. I don't know what it is, but there's something different. People experience you differently. And all of a sudden your power and your influence starts to go up because people are connected to you. I've never had someone come back to me and be like, hey, Scott, I've been working really hard to be a better communicator and a better listener. And yeah, people don't really like it. They don't like that I'm listening and they care about them. That has never, ever happened.
I think listening, it bears repeating because that's such an important piece. If somebody feels seen and feels respected by you, you're halfway there. Maybe 48% there. Well, ScottTillema.com is the website. I'll put it in the show notes. I'll also put those 2 books that you just mentioned. Thank you so much for your time. This is fascinating. And I love hearing these quote unquote soft skills from people who worked in very, very hard situations, and how well it works. If it works there, it works for the rest of us.
It is an amazing skill set to have. It's life-changing. It's life-saving. And I'm so passionate about it, not because I read it in a book, not because I saw it in a movie, but I have this lived experience of having a front row seat to the worst situations you can imagine. And I know that these skills can get the job done. So I can't wait to connect with your audience and hear their journeys on how they're using high-stakes communication to get really good outcomes.
And if you do want to get in touch with Scott, check the show notes for his website, ScottTillema.com. I'll also put his LinkedIn so you can connect. Thank you so much, Scott. I appreciate everything you do.
Thanks for having me. Great conversation.